You may have noticed it's a presidential election year. So while most years we might expect higher turnout and a nail-biting Tuesday night in November, this year the global pandemic has created many changes in the way elections will operate. Don't worry, the pandemic won't stop you from voting, but it might change the way you cast your ballot. Since everyone wants to find a way to vote safely this year and feel confident that your vote has been counted, let's spend some time looking at how the election will operate in Pennsylvania, what's going on with mail-in voting, and what you can do to make your vote count. I'm your host, Annie Klingenberg, and this is my apartment. It's also the Bully Pulpit.
So we have a new phenomena. It's called mail-in voting, where you send where a governor.
It's been here since the Civil War.
More than a century and a half ago, soldiers living in Civil War encampments wanted to cast their votes in the 1864 election, and in order to do so, they relied on the first major implementation of absentee ballots. Starting in Wisconsin, state legislation was enacted that allowed Army officers to conduct the vote in their camps and then forward the ballots. By the time the 1864 election rolled around, 19 northern states had legislation allowing soldiers to vote away from home. In the decades following the end of the Civil War, more and more states adopted some kind of law that allowed for absentee voting. While requirements differ from state to state, today registered voters can vote absentee in all 50 states. So despite modern efforts to undermine the legitimacy of mail-in ballots, our country has a long history of using them. Mail-in and absentee voting has always been carried out by the United States Postal Service, or USPS as we like to call her. Officials estimate at least 50% of votes this year, if not more, will be cast absentee. This has increased scrutiny on the Postal Service, turning it into yet another political battleground. The Postal Service currently enjoys bipartisan support, with a Reuters report reporting, quote, nearly 3/4 of Americans, including 88% of Democrats and 60% of Republicans, agreed funding for the United States Postal Service should be increased to ensure Americans' mail gets delivered in a timely fashion. However, the president has repeatedly questioned the authenticity of mail-in ballots in tweets and media releases, going so far as to tell voters in North Carolina to
send it in early and then go and vote.
By the way, doing what he just suggested is a federal offense. On the other side of the aisle, Democrats have attempted to include a $25 billion aid package for the Postal Service in this series of COVID-19 relief bills, which have already been opposed by the president and his party. Furthermore, people are worried about the 2020 appointment of Louis DeJoy as Postmaster General, who passed a series of controversial changes at the post office, including reports of plans to remove 671 mail processing machines from facilities across the country. Luckily, public outcry and a congressional testimony pushed DeJoy to hold off from any changes to, quote, avoid even the appearance of any impact on election mail. However, Democrats and other election officials remain worried about the Postal Service's capacity to handle this November's election. To prepare for the current and future legal possibilities, all but guaranteed in November, the Biden campaign has organized a special litigation unit consisting of hundreds of lawyers and 2 former Solicitor Generals. So what can you do to make sure your vote gets counted? First, make sure to request an absentee ballot. If you haven't done it yet, you still have time. You can request an absentee ballot in Pennsylvania online, by mail, or even over the phone. After you receive your ballot, you vote. You select the candidates you want. Double check to make sure, and then sign at the bottom. This is important. Make sure your signature carefully matches the one you used when you registered to vote. One of the most common reasons people get their ballots thrown out is because their signatures don't match or they don't sign at all. Then put your ballot in an envelope and mail it or drop it off as early as possible. Right now, Pennsylvania law states that a ballot received after Election Day will not be counted, even if it was postmarked before Election Day. If you send your ballot early, that will help make sure it arrives and gets counted. After you mailed your ballot or dropped it off, make sure to check the status of your ballot via email or on the Board of Elections website. If you don't have time to send your ballot in, or you forget, you can still vote in person. Just bring your ballot with you so that an election official can void it to make sure you're not trying to vote twice. If you lose your mail-in ballot, you can also still vote in person and fill out a provisional ballot that will get counted after they verify that you haven't also attempted to vote by mail. Once you've got your ballot squared away and double-checked to make sure it's been received, you wait. Because mail-in ballots are individually scanned and verified, the results of the election won't be available the night of November 3rd. Instead, it could take a few weeks to finally know who our president for the next 4 years will be, as well as the results to countless other 2020 races. Regardless of how, just make sure you exercise your right to vote this fall. I'm Annie Klingenberg. Thanks for stopping by, and this has been The Bully Pulpit.